call the meeting of the Hopkinton Town Council of June 3rd, 2013 to order with a moment of silent meditation and salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first item, I need a motion to sit as the licensing board. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Slip in a second there.
Did you slip?
No, I said I'll slip in a second.
Oh, okay.
You moved right along fast there.
Sorry. Special event permit. Number one is open a hearing on the application for a special event permit filed by the Recreation Director, Mary Sawyer, on behalf of the Nathaniel Mikowski and the Ashaway Pack 1 Cub Scouts, P.O. Box 965 Ashaway, for the overnight family campout scheduled for 1 p.m. on Saturday, June 8th, through 10 a.m. on Sunday, June 9th at the Crandall Field, 188 Main Street, Ashaway. Is the applicant present? Okay, great. At least all the, it's complete and all the,
Yes.
all the paperwork's on, okay, great. Ms. Mikowski?
No, Mr. Cowell.
Oh, Ms. Colley, you want to come up and just give us a quick snapshot of what's happening?
Okay. My name is Henry Cowell. I live at 5 Gold Road here in Hopkinton. We had the same thing last year. It's basically just a camp out for the scout families at Crandall Field. It's just an overnighter and just to work on different activities that the scouts need for camping badges and stuff.
Great. Scott, you have anybody have any questions? Scott, you have a question?
This is pretty pro forma. It's done every year. I don't know how many years they've been doing it, but it's been a few years.
Well, we hadn't done it for a while, but we did do it last year, and we're going to be trying to do it again this year, yes.
Sylvia?
No, I think it's great. I hope you have good weather.
I hope so, too.
Ms. Barbara?
Ditto and Sylvia.
Mr. David?
Yeah, same thing. One question, are you going to have open fires?
Yes, we will have, we'll have the portable pits there. Well,
Okay, but you're not going to create pits or anything?
no, no,
Good, yeah.
portable ones.
That's a wonderful idea.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm involved in the Boy Scouts, and we have them quite a bit, so they're fun stuff. Have fun and enjoy it.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve a special event permit on behalf of the Ashaway Pack 1 Cub Scouts for an overnight family campout scheduled for Saturday, June 8th and Sunday, June 9th at Crandall Field with a waiver of the filing fee.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next, number two is open a hearing on the application for a special event permit filed by the Charahoe Athletic Association for a fall festival fundraising event scheduled for Thursday, September 26, 2013 from 6 to 11 p.m., Friday, September 27th, 2013 from 6 to 11 p.m., Saturday, September 28th, 2013 from 11 p.m. to 11 p.m., and Sunday, September 29th, 2013 from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. at the Dow Field Complex located at 1118 Main Street, Hope Valley, jointly sponsored by the Charahoe Athletic Association and Northeast Midways, 308 Hopkins Hill Road, Coventry. Is the applicant here? A representative? No. Okay. Council, have any questions?
Since it's on the 26th of September, and I would imagine that this has been done in the past, as I remember. So if we even delayed it a month, I mean, I don't think it would make that much difference. Unless, can we approve it?
You can, I mean, Lisa, the applicant doesn't have to be here, does they?
No, we recommend that they do,
Right.
in the event there are questions.
Well, especially if you've got questions that mean that you cannot approve it without somebody being here, then you'll need to postpone.
Well, I'll make a motion, Mr. President, that this be approved and any fees from the town be waived.
Okay.
I have questions.
You have questions?
I'm
Okay, hold on. We'll get to that. We have a second. Yeah, we're going to have discussion. Everybody have a second on that?
I'll withdraw my motion. I think the important thing is that this has been done before. So basically, unless there's been a problem in the past, which I don't know of any,
It was done last year, I think. I don't
That was
know.
the first year.
First year.
Last year was the first year.
Well, people, a lot of these people are involved in making that whole area a lot better than it was, that whole strip from, so I'm inclined to support this. I'm interested in hearing what my council colleagues have as far as questions.
So do you have anything to?
No,
ask?
I just wanted to point out, they didn't happen to ask for any waivers of any
Right.
fees.
It's not checked.
But,
They did submit a check for $100.
yeah, okay. So, yeah, so it's something I want to support. However, I understand if there are questions that need to be asked, then it would have to be postponed. But I don't happen to have any.
Do you have any questions, Barbara, you think that would
Yeah,
prevent it from being?
Well,
looked
I
at?
have, I mean, it was done for the first time last year, and I think it's a wonderful idea. They had the fair, and I know they didn't have good weather, which was part of the problem. I had two questions on this. Will there be goods sold? I believe they said food vendors, which are licensed, but I don't know if there's also going to be some other product retail vendors. I think they're going to have those as well, but I don't see that here, and I don't think they need to be licensed. The parking was a problem last year, is my understanding, because it's right on Route 3 and getting cars in and out. But I remember last year there was off-site and on-site problems with parking, and I don't know if those have been resolved. I think I'm hoping they have been.
I know that behind St. Joseph's Church, there's a vacant lot that they were using, and it was really big and it wasn't even full. So they had that at their disposal, but I think it wasn't terribly well received last year.
Right.
So I don't think they really utilized that parking lot.
My
to
concern
the
too is
extent that they
across
should.
the street, the kids have to cross the street.
Oh, yeah,
and
they
that's
have
a
to.
very busy street
Right.
to cross. So I just want to know how they're resolving the parking issue, because I know it was an issue last year.
Well, they're not here to answer that question. So I
Right,
guess-
so, I mean, that one I really would like to know. I know that they weren't any noisier. I know that they seem to have had police, but I'm not sure if it was enough to handle the parking issues, or if they've now figured out how to resolve them.
Okay, David?
Yeah, I agree. I don't see anything on here about police presence, other than the police are going to be aware of it, but I'd like to know if there's actually going to be a couple of patrolmen walking around on the grounds.
sure.
See, these are the questions I need to ask him.
Yeah.
So I need to ask that. I'd like to know and I'd like to know from the chief, if the chief were here, if there was a problem last year, any kind of a police problem last year, and if there was, how can that could be resolved? The other thing is where do I guess it's a carnival, I guess we kind of call it
It's
a
kind of a carnival setting in the
Right.
Dow Field parking lot.
Where are the carnival employees going to be staying overnight?
Oh, I don't know. I think
Well-
they said your house.
I thought that. That's why I asked.
Only kidding.
No, I'm not concerned, but I'm curious as to whether we're going to have trailers there up in the back someplace with people
Yeah.
living there, and
Sure.
and then what do you do about septic systems and stuff like that? It's just something I'd like to know about.
Yeah, it sounds like we have a lot of unanswered questions because the representative's not here, so we'll just table it.
Can I,
Sure.
just in one response, as far as the waiving of fees, whether or not they ask for waiving of fees, it's been traditional in the past that even when we've had groups that have not asked for a waiver of the fees, we've given them that because they're a nonprofit organization. And the Charrow Athletic Association, whether or not they ask for it, it's a fundraiser for them, which benefits the community. So, in the past, we have actually had groups that haven't mentioned they wanted a waiver, but we've given it to them because we thought to encourage them in their work. And I just want to point that out.
I would support a waiver as well, but why don't we table it till the next meeting? I guess maybe Lisa, you can reach out to.
I got a question.
Yes, please.
I was going to make a motion that we table or continue the hearing until a representative is present or available. Does that do it?
Yeah.
Well, why don't you table it to a defined time so that we then tell the.
Next meeting.
Next meeting.
17th?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would agree. And I have the other question on the listing. It's a fundraising event to include all youth groups in the town area. So it isn't just for Charahoe Athletic Association, or if other youth groups are going to come and make money too, which is a very good thing. And certainly I would be interested in waiving the filing fee if that's the case with the other volunteer nonprofits in town.
Okay.
Do you have a second for that motion?
No, not yet.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to adjourn as licensing board and reconvene as council.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next on the agenda is the zoning ordinance amendment, zoning ordinance language amendment hearing. Open a hearing on the zoning ordinance amendment to the zoning map and zoning ordinance language amendment. The petitions are filed by Christine Austin and Amy Vashon, doing business as the Kids Company, for property located at 1111 Main Street, Hope Valley, 02832. Property owned by the Phoenix Group, 2 William Street, Providence, Rhode Island, identified as Assessor's Plat 28, Lot 133, a neighborhood business zone with uses limited to real estate offices or professional offices. The applicant requests an amendment to August 5th, 1985 Town Council decision that approved a limited use change in a neighborhood business zone to include a daycare center as permitted use, together with the previously approved uses of real estate office and professional offices, and the applicants request a language amendment to Section 5 District Use Regulations to include a daycare center designation as specified below, and to request a language amendment to Section 5A Groundwater and Wellhead Protection Ordinance to create a land use category of daycare center also specified below. The petitions are filed in accordance with Chapter 134, Section 16 of the zoning ordinances of the town of Hopkinton as amended. The applicant or representatives present, okay. Filing fees, posted notices, all that good stuff, Lisa?
Yes,
All right.
we'll be billing out for the notice and certified mail notice as well.
Okay. And Mr. Auburn?
Yes, Mr. Council President, members of the council, thanks for hearing us, this public hearing this evening. By way of introduction, my name is John J. Auburn III. I'm a land use planning consultant and also a licensed attorney in the state of Rhode Island. I do have a copy of my curricula vitae, which I could present to the clerk. It's Aubin, A-U-B-I-N. With me this evening is Christine Austin and Amy Vashon. They're the principals of the Kids Co., which is a business seeking to establish themselves in Hopkinton. The applications that are before the council this evening, there are 2 applications. One is for a 2-part zoning ordinance amendment to the town zoning ordinance to create a land use category within the land use table and within the groundwater protection, wellhead protection ordinance for daycare centers. And the second application, as noted in the agenda, is to amend the August 5th, 1985 Town Council use limited zoning amendment to the property, which allowed change from a residential use to neighborhood business use limited to professional offices. I've been involved in the project since about mid-March, and I know Amy and Christine have been working with the property owner for a significant amount of time before that. They have negotiated a lease agreement subject to the council's decisions on these applications, and have also started to look at some of the costs to refit the building and prepare it for the new use. By way of process, my suggestion would be, and certainly I would defer to the solicitor, that the council may want to consider the zoning ordinance language amendment first, since the second application is somewhat dependent on that application. I'm not sure if the council wants me to walk through the application, or if the council had any questions off the bat. Certainly you can address those, or however the council wants to proceed.
I'm sorry.
I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to her.
Okay, you don't know about me right now?
No, okay, Mr. Auburn, yeah, just go ahead and start through the first.
Okay,
part
sure.
of the-
The first amendment is amendment to Section 5 District Use Regulations of the zoning ordinance to create a land use category for a daycare center within the land use table. It would be land use category number 758, listed as daycare center. And then there's also a table on page 2 of the application which indicates the treatment of that land use within the various zoning districts, which would be RFR 80 and RES 1, both of the residential districts, special use permit, neighborhood business, and commercial P for permitted, and manufacturing zoning district N for not permitted. Did the council want to discuss that or move on to the second?
Yeah, I think we'll,
Okay.
if anybody has, David, we'll start with you.
I'll pass for the moment.
Okay, Barbara, any?
Did you review that with our building and zoning officer?
Yes, I originally contacted the zoning official with regard to the property. Unbeknownst to Christine and Amy as they began the process was the use limitation on the property. Once that was discovered, there was a request made to the zoning official as to how the proposed daycare center use would be treated under the current ordinance, and whether or not it would be considered a professional office use under the previous 1985 town council designation for that property. The determination was that under the current ordinance, it would be classified as a private nursery school.
Which isn't as appropriate as the daycare center, which you've established here with the RFR 80 special use permit, the Res 1 special use neighborhood business permit. But these SSPs were discussed with the zoning officer?
Yes, the application was reviewed prior to submission with the zoning office and the town solicitor as well.
This is also pending before the planning board for
Okay.
their consideration.
And recommendation Wednesday.
The next
sorry.
meeting. And what you're going to be doing tonight, no matter what you do, is going to be continuing your hearing, at least for the purposes of receiving the planning board's recommendation. Just so you know, because they were not able to hear this before you did. So you don't have a planning board recommendation yet.
They're meeting Wednesday.
Correct.
Right. Sylvia, do you have any questions on that part of it?
Well, I have questions, and I'm not one to, I want to deal with the project and the different elements. I'd rather deal with the entire project as a whole, so I can have at it now.
Yeah, well, we were dealing, I guess, with the first part of it, which is the amendment to the current use of the property, right?
Yes. No, the first element would be the amendment to the town zoning ordinance to create the daycare center
Okay.
designation within the ordinance.
All right. And currently, I guess that there's only 2 designations in neighborhood business?
Currently, under the use limitation from 1985, yes. Those 2 uses limited to the property.
Yeah.
So I'll turn to the solicitor. What they had just mentioned, the language, or creating this in the district use table?
Yes.
I guess my question would be, if the council wanted, or the town wanted to, only give them an amendment to allow that use on that property to add to the 1985 decision, for instance. Now, that would allow them to move forward with the project. And could they move forward with the project with just that alone?
You mean without?
Just that one, without the other changes?
What would you designate them to do, though, Sylvia? That's the problem, is you've got to give them, assuming that you wanted to allow them to expand the 1985 decision to include a use. What's the use you would give them, since there is none in our code that would satisfy?
Okay, so they, okay, I see
You
your
know what I mean?
point.
So the reason why this precedes everything else is because you don't currently have a use that would take into account what they're proposing to do with the property. So what they're saying is you need to adopt this new use category, so that there is a category that allows this somewhere in town, and then you need to allow us to have that specific designated use at the property.
And so, okay, all right, I got you, all right. So
It all works together.
Right. All right.
And can I
It's just that all right, so I just get nervous, that makes sense, but I would get nervous about allowing this to occur in all neighborhood businesses. I guess that would be one of my concerns. So, okay,
It'll be a separate use category, is what
okay.
that's before us. Scott, do you have anything?
Yeah, basically, I think it's pretty much what Sylvia was saying about, the question isn't just about this project. It's that if other people come in and want to do the same thing, what do we say or how do we respond to it? And obviously, adult daycare, child care are very important things in our society nowadays. And how do we, are we going to be obliged in all areas that are currently zoned like this area is are we going to be obliged to also do that in other sections of the town?
Well, I think, Scott, this would create a new category.
Yeah.
So it would be open to anyone else, like, potentially, I guess, that wanted to do that. But currently, there's no daycare category. It's private nursery and what else? I forget what else, but.
There's a number of educational uses that are more
Real
actually
estate, yeah.
schools.
So
Again, the only thing that passed my mind is that something like this, for people who work, that location is pretty accessible to 95, so if people are working in Warwick or wherever, they can drop their children off and they have access. It's not in a rural area of town, it's right on the main drag, so-called, in Hope Valley. So I can see it could be convenient for people to do that, because location is very important. There's a lot of types of business.
Let me just add, if I may, Frank, what's been proposed for the new use category is up to you in terms of how you do it. So they proposed that it be by special use permit in the 2 residential zones, that it be permitted in neighborhood business and commercial, and that it be not permitted in manufacturing. You're not wedded to that. In other words, Sylvia, if your concern is that it shouldn't be allowed by right in every neighborhood business zone, then, you have a perfect right to enact this if you choose to, with whatever restrictions you want on each of these categories. So you're not wedded to permitting it as of right in a neighborhood business zone, or in a commercial zone, or by special use permit in an RFR zone. If you create the category, you're the ones that are in control of how those S's, P's, and N's factor into this. That's all.
To what extent does the council have the responsibility of looking at this one project, or how it could impact all zones of that nature throughout the town?
That's your job. That's what you're doing here tonight.
But it's not limited to this one specific.
This
project.
use category would not be. This use category would be across the board.
And then the zoning board would have the option of granting a special use permit.
If under the categories where it's only allowed with a special use permit, yes.
So Pat, if I can just clarify what you had said earlier about, with the permitted in neighborhood business and commercial, you're saying you could put an exclusion to some extent on neighborhood business?
You could make that by special use permit if you decided that was warranted. You could prohibit it entirely in neighborhood business, which would put these people out of luck.
Well, right.
Do you know what I mean? So it factors into their application, because whatever you do with respect to how you define this category is obviously going to affect the application for the use category in this district.
Because I'm interested in knowing what our planning board has to say about this. I'd be very interested in their recommendation. I am certainly open to neighborhood business being a permitted use. It is a neighborhood, it is a business. It is a business mandatory and necessary for neighborhoods in order to survive as working human beings. I understand some of Sylvia's concerns on possibly making it a special use permit to make sure it's safe for the children. But I know I'm certainly open to having it either permitted, which I don't think I'm going to have any problem with, or if necessary, special use. But I am interested in what our planning board will have to say about this as well.
You might also want to ask Brad to come and give his input on it.
David, do you have a?
Yeah, completely. I think it's a wonderful idea. I'm a little concerned about a special use permit, and I say that because, for you, Pat, are we setting a precedent here? If we give them a special use permit in a neighborhood business zone, then the next person that comes along in some other neighborhood zone says, hey, you gave it to them, I want one too.
You don't give special use permits, the zoning board does. So if you,
All right.
if you said that this would be a permitted use in a neighborhood business zone with a special use permit,
Yeah.
then anyone who had a neighborhood business zone property that wanted to use it for this use
Yeah.
would have to go to the zoning board and ask them for a special use permit. And they're the ones who dole out the special use permits, you don't.
Okay.
So I think the simple answer to your question is yes. Anyone in a neighborhood business zone, if you gave this a special use permit designation, would have to go to the zoning board to get a special use permit in order to allow the use.
I really don't see anything detrimental at all about a daycare center in a neighborhood zone. I really don't. I'm with you. I think it's a wonderful idea.
I mean, my argument on it is all our children are raised in our neighborhoods, and to me, it's a perfect use that would be in a neighborhood business zone. You're not talking about a restaurant where you have to worry about, ancillary noise or grease or any of that type of stuff. I mean, as far as land uses go, it's, pretty far down there on the intensity scale.
It's also extremely useful to the society that we live in right now, and we don't have any.
In today's society, we don't have the latchkey children anymore, kids aren't, if you give your kid a key and, tell them to go home after the bus, DCYF will be showing up.
It's
So-
also really good because where you are, and in a neighborhood business zone, we often have food stores, so the parents can stop and get dinner, pick up child, go to the vet. There's lots of things in that area when they're still in the process of
No,
picking up
and it-
children, which makes it very convenient for the parents, too. And it's a use of other businesses in town. It encourages the use. It's like you drop your children off at Dow Field for baseball, but you stop at Mom and Pa's to get subs. It's very business
Councilman?
friendly.
Yes. thank you.
Thompson, did you have a question?
No, David did.
I had a couple questions. Have you done research just to find out if there's any other daycare centers in this area?
There is a daycare center. I believe it's operated as an accessory use to, I'm not sure if the Baptist church, a little bit up the street from this site. I think I noted it in the application. I just don't recall is that Wood River? Is the
Wood
name of
River
it?
Preschool, yeah.
Wood
But
River
the
Preschool.
difference is with what we would be offering is full-time daycare as long as with the preschool aspect, so they're going to be getting the instruction to get them ready for the school system, not just, a lot of the preschools are limited to, by age group, you can only go 2 mornings. If you're 3, if you're 4, you can go 3 mornings. So that doesn't satisfy the needs of a lot of community members. They still have to find alternate
This is
daycare.
full-time daycare
Yes.
you're offering.
And I did not research the establishment of that use. I was essentially working off the communication I had with the zoning official specific
The reason
to
I
our
ask that
site.
is I want to make sure you're not stepping on anybody else's toes as far as all of a sudden, you've got 2 daycare centers, then you have the third, and all of a sudden, everybody's struggling because, we have too many daycare centers.
My understanding is from
No.
Amy and Christine is that there's a waiting list at that facility.
I have 2 children that
Yeah.
are in daycare right now,
Okay.
and we use a private daycare. There's home
Amy,
daycare.
Maybe just identify yourself.
Sure.
For the record.
My name is Amy Vashon. I'm a 10-year veteran elementary educator. I work in Connecticut, but I'm also certified in Rhode Island. I have 2 small children, ages 6 and 4, in the Charahoe Public Schools that go to daycare. They have a private home daycare provider, and this is the first year that my kids have been in daycare. I've had family members that have always taken care of my kids, and that wasn't available to me. So it was a very tough year for me to allow my kids to go to daycare because it's a tedious process to find good daycare and trust somebody with your children all day when you're, I'm 100 miles away, so, yeah. So I've searched, from Westerly to Exeter, and there really is no facility available. And if you do get into a facility, you're waitlisted everywhere. So it's not an immediate opening a lot of the times, especially for, 3 to 5, that's a tough age to get in, so.
Yes, Steve.
Could you both tell me what your experience is in daycare?
I was a professional nanny for almost 7 years before I started to become a school teacher. So I do that during the summer as well. This is my 16th year of being a professional nanny. So, and I have 2 small children in that age range for daycare. I have not worked in a daycare setting facility, but I have been an elementary school teacher for 10 years. So I've dealt with K through 6 for the past 10 years.
And Amy, you have to go through certification with the state as a daycare provider?
I will have to go through certification. It's just a few courses that I have to take because actually my Connecticut certification qualifies me for early childhood in Rhode Island. So there's just a few courses that I need to take and some mentoring from Christine. So I will not be the lead teacher, but I will be one of the teachers at the facility.
And you would provide us with that certification?
Absolutely.
Before the doors open?
Absolutely.
Good.
Christine, you want to
I'm Christine Austin.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Christine Austin. I currently have taught in the Charahoe School District for 11 years. I've been teaching grade 1 for umpteen years. I have a 2- and 4-year-old that, again, I have to travel for preschool because I want that educational piece. I have to pay for home daycare as well as preschool and have to travel to Charlestown to drop off my 4-year-old because there's just really nothing in between. I also did a lot of nannying through college, and because I've been in first grade so long, I've already sent my certificate to the state, so I think I only need to take 2 classes this summer, and will be early childhood certified as well. Everybody that's going to be employed there is going to be a Rhode Island certified teacher, including the assistants.
You will provide those certifications to the town?
Yep, absolutely. We've already sent them off to the state.
Yes, Sylvia.
I want to point out something to everyone here. We have a water line in Hope Valley because, and strictly because, the density was increased along Main Street. The lots were too small, and the septics couldn't handle it, and the water table's too high, and we ended up having to put a water line in. The building's septic that we have, the latest information that we have is the septic went in 1990 or thereabouts.
Yes, that day was
And it's
concurrent.
Let me
with-
finish. It's a 1,000-gallon tank, and the notes on the certificate that we have from DEM says 16 employees maximum. And I'm very, very concerned that if we allowed daycare centers or nursery schools or whatever to go on to neighborhood business at all, before such a thing would happen, I think the council needs to look at neighborhood business throughout town and see how small the lots are before you blankly allow it to go in neighborhood business. So that would be my concern. However, I would like to see your project go forward, and I'm in favor of amending the 1984 decision, doing whatever's necessary so that you can be allowed to do that, in knowing that DEM or the planning board and DEM or whatever, if there's something more you need to do to your septic, obviously that's going to be required, or you'll end up going somewhere else. However, so I would like to see it go forward, but I would not want to, because of this, allow these centers to go throughout all the neighborhood businesses. That would be my concern.
So you would be in favor of a special use permit?
I would be in it should not be allowed. I would not want these daycare center, period, to be allowed in neighborhood business. Just as it is now, if you look in our district use table, nursery schools are not allowed in neighborhood business, and you've got a lot of kids and they're flushing toilets. I mean, these things get used. So, and neighborhood businesses are typically small lots, and typically they're small septics because it's usually a home and it's got a little business, maybe a real estate office or something small. Now, a daycare center, in my mind, is not small. But I know that land and I know that building is significant, and it sounds like it would work for you, especially given everything that's around it. So you'd have to deal with the DEM issue. We're trying to caution the council to make sure that when you go down this, that we find a way to make things work for this new business, but that we not allow it to happen in all neighborhood business zones. That would be my concern.
Thank you. Scott?
I would imagine that we could set it up that in order to issue a special use permit, the zoning board would have to take into consideration those type of issues, or they would normally anyways, as far as septic, for depending upon the dimensions of the property. So that even if you're permitted it by special use permit, you could also say you can't do it unless you have a certain amount of land. So you could probably satisfy that need. I do think Sylvia brings up some great points. We all know that area and the history as far as why we have a water line and the septic problem in that area, et cetera. The big question is, does the council want to try to make this happen and address some legitimate concerns? I'd want to hear from somebody better qualified than I as far as the land and whether or not the septic can
Yeah, the
can
planning
handle
board's
it.
going to meet on Wednesday, and I'm sure that they're going to bring this issue up, because that's something they deal with on an ongoing basis with any project that wants to start in town.
If we had
So,
sewers in the town of Hopkinton, we would solve that issue, but we don't, so.
you know,
Mr.
Yeah,
Council
Mr.
President, just to respond a little bit with regards to the capacity of the system. Previously, as was noted, the system was designed for 16 employees. With the current proposed use added to the site currently, right now, there is a small one-person law office in the basement of the property, a dental office upstairs, which I believe has 3 or 4 at most employees. 3 employees, and then Kids Co. So the total number of employees would be 6. On the site. Obviously, it's a little bit different. You've got children, but I wouldn't say it would be that much different from having a fully functioning medical clinic in there, as was the previous use. I did speak with the building's the property owner, with regard to the functioning of the septic system since he's owned the building. And he said even when the building was fully occupied, they did not have a problem with that system. Notwithstanding that, I did recommend that Amy and Christine, as part of the process of leasing the property, make sure, and the property owner agreed to this as well, that the septic system be inspected and pumped if necessary prior to their occupancy. The other thing I would note, not to blindly say we have to trust DEM, but DEM does have a process that is built into the building permit process and change of use process to assess when a building or a space changes use, and it's called a system suitability determination. And certainly, as we move through the process here, and certainly I would hope that we could, no matter what the council does on a Hopkinton-wide basis, we can find a way to make sure it's a permitted use on this property. But there is a process in place to assess that septic system on this property to make sure it's correct for that use. I can't say right now, because I'm not that familiar with the triggering of that process, whether it would be kicked off from going from a medical office use to a daycare use. I think that's a determination that DEM makes. But again, in my experience and having worked in land use for 15 years, a medical office of that size is going to have at least the same, if not more, wastewater discharge.
Can I just add to that? And also, as part of the state requirement to have licensing as a daycare center, they have to have the building inspector come and inspect. We have to have the fire marshal come down. So that's all mandated by the state as well, that the septic is checked, the plumbing is checked, everything. So that has to go to the state as well.
I think it might be beneficial to the council to hear some testimony about this project. You're kind of getting it a little bit backwards. I think it might be, you're asking questions that are project specific for good reason, because you have not heard testimony about what is specifically being proposed for this use. So maybe it would help you a little bit if you did what you ordinarily do, which is sit and listen to testimony for a little bit and get a sense of what it is the applicants are proposing. It's just a suggestion.
With that, we'll move on to the second application, which is a zoning ordinance amendment, and this is an amendment to the 1985 Town Council use limited zone change for the property, which occurred on August 5th of 1985. We're discussing 1111 Main Street, Assessor's Plat 28, Lot 133, located in a neighborhood business zoning district, use limited currently to real estate and professional office uses. Essentially, the petitioner is asking that daycare center use be added to the limited uses for the property. The applicant is seeking to establish within a 1,258 square foot office unit the proposed daycare. With regard to any site alterations or any new construction, the only site alteration will be the installation of a 40 by 50 play area, which will have an impervious surface. There will be no change to the pervious or impervious surface on the property. As far as percentage of pervious versus impervious, that's going to remain the same. No changes to the parking areas. There will be a designated walkway for the children to access the building, access from the building, the play area, without having to cross the parking area. The parking area is segregated on the site from the dental office use, which provides Amy and Christine with the ability to have parents come up and drop their children off and know that the entrance that they're going to is the entrance for the facility. As far as the surrounding land uses, there is, I believe it's Fairway Road runs behind the property. Beyond that is a cemetery. St. Joseph's Church is directly to the west, and to the east, I believe, is a residential property. And the play areas, Grange and the river, are located across the street on the other side of Route 138. And again, essentially, we're here just asking to add in, with this application as surgically away as possible, an additional use onto the property, that being a daycare center use. And as I noted previously, it's a less intense use than the previous medical office use. As far as number of children that'll probably be served.
Let me just stop you for a second.
Yes.
This council takes testimony under oath from witnesses who've been placed under oath. We appreciate your argument, but that's what you've just been giving us as argument. What you need to do really is swear one of your witnesses and bring in this testimony for a sworn witness.
Okay, that's fine. At this point, Amy and Christine, you want to step forward? Okay, and just introduce yourself and give your address.
Christine Austin, 107 Spring Street, Hopkinton, Rhode Island.
And Ms.
Swear,
Sweet.
please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. So basically what our plan is, and according to the state regulations, because of the plumbing facilities and the size of the building, we can have a maximum number of 20 children. We're looking to split that into 2 groups, morning and afternoon, with a few that will stay through the day. So at any time, there won't be more than 20 children. It's not even legal for us to have more than 20 children. We anticipate somewhere between 16 and 18. There'll be 3 staff members at all times. That's about it. Anything else?
What is the staff ratio to children in a daycare center?
We're actually going to be, it's for our age group, it's either 1 to 9 or 1 to 10. So we'll have 20 we'll have 18 to 20 with 3, depending on the age group. So if they're 3-year-olds, it has to be 1 to 9 ratio. If they're 4 or 5, it has to be 1 to 10. So based on what we get for enrollment, we'll have to, make some decisions on that time.
It's real. Can we take a 5-minute break?
Sure, we'll take a 5-minute recess. Sure.
Dana, excuse me.
Sure.
What's that?
I really want to hear.
Oh, flip back on for now.
The planning board's going to look at the septic system, and they're going to make a determination, and that's what their job is. So I'm not too concerned about the septic system right now until I hear something from the planning board saying it's okay, it's not okay. But I don't know.
What's that?
Look, patients can come in and out. I know I brought my daughter in there, she didn't want to bathroom, she just went in, so the doctor brought her over, I came right out, so we went back home. Some of the kids, some of the patients.
Dark, knock around.
But when you've got,
They just roll right through it.
Oh, yeah, just-
They're used to it, yeah. They just, it's like the same thing, and it's just a different name.
So, but when you've got kids there, basically, warm kids and out, and things like that, they're going to go, each kid's going to go to flush that toilet at least, if not twice. But they still flush the toilet. That's not the question why you're here tonight. That's what I know, but I'm concerned about is actually the liquid content that goes down, the water that goes down. I think that's what's the problem. I think it's going to be solids. There'll be the liquids. I know they don't, but it's still, before 4-year-old is still going to pee in the first that's right. Just like a grown-up is first so it's going to be.
It's probably cool out.
Okay, we're going to reconvene our hearing. Mr. Auburn?
Christine, can you tell me what your current address is? 107 Spring Street, Hopkinton, Rhode Island, 02832. And can you tell us why you're here this evening? We are looking for a zoning amendment to the language from the previous zoning ordinance in 1985 in order to open up a daycare center at 1111 Main Street in Hope Valley. And you're interested in opening business at this facility? Yes. Daycare center? Mm-hmm. And can you tell us a little bit about your educational experience? I've been teaching 12... excuse me. Oh, sorry. Your experience in the education field. I've been teaching for 12 years. I started in Coventry as a special education teacher. I then came to the Charahoe region, and I've been working at Ashway Elementary School. I began there as a special education teacher. I still hold a current certification K through 8 in special ed. I taught special ed for 3 years in Charahoe, and then have currently been teaching first grade for the last 8 years. And you're now interested in starting a daycare business in Hopkinton? Yes. And what's the name of that business? The Kids Co. Rhode Island. And do you have a partner in that business? Yes, my partner is Amy Vashon. And Amy's here tonight? Yes. And you contacted the owner of 1111 Main Street. I believe the property was posted for lease? The property was posted for lease. Yep, we contacted the realtor and then met with the owner, who we've been dealing directly with the owner at this point. How long have you been working with the realtor? Well, we've been working with the owner for the past probably 4 months or so. We've been working on the process of getting our state licensing for about 6 months. It's a lengthy process, a lot of paperwork, a lot of things that you have to have for the state. So we've already met with them twice. As far as the licensing, they've approved all of our building plans. What's that? They viewed the property. We've had the local fire marshal, Ray Bader, come and inspect the property. We are going to be upgrading the fire system so that it has a direct line to Hope Valley Fire Department, which it currently doesn't have. We're going to be putting in some security systems in order for the safety of the children, which it currently doesn't have. It just has an alarm system. And as you were looking at the property and determining what you needed for licensing, did an issue came up with regard to the zoning of the property, a request? Yes, it was originally listed as a commercially zoned property, so we were pretty far in the process, and then I believe it was the day before we were going to sign the lease with the owner, I decided to call the town hall, and they looked it up and got back to me right away and said there was an issue with the zoning, that it was the neighborhood business special. So at that point, I then contacted John because of his experience in planning, and we filed all the applications. We've made sure that we've had pretty much everything in order. That's where we're at right now. Here we are. And can we talk a little bit specifically about the site, the building itself? It's 1111 Main Street? Yep, the building used to be a doctor's office, so it had a lot of smaller rooms that we're going to be reconstructing to have 2 very large rooms, so that we'll be able to separate age groups based on academic and social skills, with 1 certified teacher in each room, and then a teacher assistant who's also a certified teacher, still holds current Rhode Island certification, that will kind of float in between and cover as we need. We also looked at the playground area. He's got a lot of property back there. It's very nice. It's handicap accessible. We've had plumbers come in and look at the plumbing and the toilet situation. What's the size of the lease space? The size of the lease space, I believe, is 1278, but with our reconstruction and removing some walls, it's going to end up to be about 1,400 square feet total. And other than the interior refit of the building for the daycare center use, are you proposing any other new construction on the site? No. Are you considering putting in any other site amenities? As far as... Oh, yeah, the playground we're going to put in. We have to have the fenced-in playground area.
which will be behind the parking lot. So they'll have plenty of room kind of at that back end of the church. They'll have a gated walkway from the building to the playground area. And then it'll be completely fenced in with a locking gate.
And then the playground area, say if you were on Route 138,
Yep.
is there anything, say if you're looking into the back of the property that screens that from?
Yeah, there's a
from
large
138?
row of forsythia bushes and a lot of landscaping that he's put in. There's actually a small, like, embankment and some maple trees, which we're leaving as kind of a blockage so that, you know, you don't see the playground when you're driving by
So
the
the play area
road.
will be screened from?
So the
from
play area will
road.
be screened from the public.
And how many employees do you intend on having?
3 employees,
Employees,
including ourselves.
okay. And are you aware that the town council limited the use of the property in 1985 to professional offices and a real estate office?
Yes.
Again, there was an issue where this use wasn't considered a professional office.
Yes.
An application was made. And do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I think just, and the reason that we were looking at this way is because the state pretty much divides they have 3 areas, daycare center, family home daycare, which would be, you know, someone that stays at home and has children come to their house, and then a licensed preschool, which just offers preschool programs, which is similar to Wood River Preschool. Then so we came up with a plan and, you know, thought that it would be great for the community to have the full-time daycare with the preschool aspects because, you know, a lot of the daycares around and looking with young children, they don't really do the educational piece. So, you know, knowing that the standards are getting higher and being in the system, we thought it would be beneficial to have the educational piece with the daycare offering.
And Christine, you mentioned it before a little bit. I just want to go over it one more time. Now, in addition to, say, a review we do with the building officials, say if you were putting an antique store in, where you basically have the building official come in and look at, you know, what walls you were changing and making sure your plumbing is correct. Because you're a daycare, are there additional reviews that you have to go through with the state? And
Yes.
just talk a little bit about those.
We've already had to submit, we've had the carpenter come, construction come, we've had to submit plans for the interior, we've had to submit plans for the plumbing, we've had to submit the fire marshal's report, we have to submit the alarm company's report, which is going to be basically like the Charahoe schools where they have the camera and they'll have to be buzzed in. We've had the woman from the state, from DCYF, come down and inspect the property. I've gone and met with her supervisor and herself, gone over our plans, gone over our curriculum, gone over all of that kind of stuff for licensing to move forward. We've
Any
submitted our certifications.
Background check?
We had to go to the AG's office last week and get a BCI check that's like the nationwide one, CPR and first aid training. Oh, radon lead testing, and then they require additional building inspection. They require an additional fire inspection from the state fire marshal's office. And then they come in and do periodic inspections throughout the year.
So you would say daycare centers are pretty well-rated, state well-rated?
It's very regulated.
I don't have anything further else. Councilman.
No further testimony? Okay. Does anyone on the council have any,
From anyone or from us?
from anyone or from this witness?
I'm
No
sorry?
further testimony?
All set with this witness, unless there's,
And not from Amy as well, or are you all set?
did you want to talk a little bit about your experience and then?
Sure.
Please identify yourself.
My name is Amy Vashon. I am a 10-year veteran. Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes. My name is Amy Vashon. I'm a 10-year veteran elementary school teacher in Connecticut, but I do hold a current Rhode Island certification for elementary education as well. I have a master's in education, in elementary education. I have 2 small children that are at the preschool age, so I'm constantly doing preschool activities at home because they come home with activities. I have a daughter in kindergarten as well, so they're both at the same age and level and they're a boy and a girl, so they're constantly competing with different things as well when it comes to school. This has been kind of a dream for me for the past 4 years since I changed from a middle school setting to an elementary school setting, that I wanted to change over and go into the daycare aspect. I've always been a professional nanny since I was 13 years old. I've worked across Connecticut and Rhode Island with different families and have a true passion for it. So this is something that has been dear to my heart, and I've just been waiting for the right opportunity for it to come across for me.
And Amy, you're aware of the property use limitation that town council placed on the property in 1985?
Yes.
And, why you filed the application with Christine to come to the council tonight to ask them to change that 1985 decision?
Yes.
And the use that you would use the property for, that to be approved would be what?
To have a daycare center, an early learning center, with both daycare and preschool aspects.
Council, any questions for me?
Yes. Go ahead, Bob.
On the daycare center, what age are you planning on beginning?
The ages will be 3 to 5.
So 3 to 5, so daycare, you're not really doing the 2-year-olds, you're not doing the younger children?
The 0 to 2 will not be included for this year.
But you might incorporate them later?
Down the line, just dependent upon how the business goes.
So generally 3 to 5 is you're doing this because you're planning on making it a daycare center that's actually a preschool?
It will have the preschool aspect, so there will be the educational piece for the 3 hours, either in the AM and the PM, but then with the option for the parent to allow the child to stay for daycare purposes for the remainder of the time.
But can they stay all day?
Absolutely.
So you'll have from 7 in the morning till 5?
Well, we're trying to do the Charahoe school hours to work with that. So it would be like the 8:30 to 4 o'clock time,
But parents have to get to work.
with the possibility of an hour before and an hour after school if need be.
So you are thinking of staying open 7:30, so parents can get to work. They have to drop the child off and then actually get to work till 5 or 5:30. Because daycare truly is working people, not preschool
Correct.
timing. And then will you do after-school care too, so children can be dropped off from a school bus? Or are you, again, you're only staying in 3 to 5, so you're not planning on after-school care for children over the age of 5? Like first graders or?
Not at this time.
Not at this time. So
I mean, if there are children that are attending other preschool programs, you have Hope Valley, you have Wood River, and they would like to incorporate us in for the daycare aspect, then they would be able to come after their preschool program to our daycare for the remainder of the day, yes.
Right, so they can do preschool in the morning and then they could do daycare in the afternoon?
Correct.
Can I comment?
Bill Seppo? For now?
Yeah, for now.
Scott?
Yes, I do have a couple of questions. Are you going to limit the number of children and like compose like a waiting list? Like you only take 15 children or whatever, then have a waiting list? Is there going to be a limit to the number of children you're going to accept?
We can only have, because of the capacity of the building and the requirements of the state, there can only be 20 children at one time. We have a little bit of flexibility because of children only attending possibly the preschool program, where we could pick up additional children for just the daycare for the remainder of the day. But at one time, there cannot be more than 20 children in the building with us.
Yeah, the other thing is, and I'm sure that they have so many groups that they give accreditation, and I know you're just starting out, so I wouldn't expect you to have accreditation, but
Oh, yes, they will.
you have accreditation already?
If they're doing preschool, you are accredited to be a preschool. There's
We'll have it through the state
This
and then also.
will be licensed by this.
Could you go into that about the accreditation, or I assume that you would start and they would come and visit you
Yeah, but they're going to have all the accreditation necessary, Scott. I don't
They
know if
have
we-
to.
Yeah, the licensing will be, we
It's a
can't even open
certification.
without the license,
Yeah, we
yeah.
can't open without it.
So,
Okay,
whatever that process may be.
I'm sure you did.
It's quite complex, actually.
You obviously took a note of the zone and you came to us for zoning. Did you look at any other locations besides this specific one to accomplish your goal?
Yes, we did.
I don't have any other further questions at this time.
Ms. Sylvia?
No, I don't have anything more.
David, Barbara?
Mr. Orban
Mr.
has...
I have a little bit of testimony. I just wanted to be sworn in and rely on my planning background with regard to some of the kind of nuts and bolts elements of it.
Lisa, you want to swear witness?
Do you solemnly swear that your testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Mr. Orban, give us your planning qualifications first, please.
For the last 6 years, until last September, I was the planning director for the town of Cumberland. In that capacity, I was in charge of all planning functions for the town. I was the only full-time planner in the office. I had a couple of part-time employees that assisted me in that, but the bulk of the planning work for the town was conducted by myself. Prior to that, for 9 years, I was a staff planner. I was a staff planner for the town of North Kingstown. My specific responsibilities for North Kingstown was development plan review, site plan reviews, if you will. I was also staff to the zoning board, as well as staff to the Historic District Commission.
What is SAP?
Staff. Staff.
Staff.
I'm sorry, a little dry. I don't have any water up here. Staff to the zoning board, as well as staff to the Historic District Commission, which in North Kingstown is essentially the area around Wickford.
You've got a slightly unusual situation tonight, which is that even though Mr. Orban is representing his clients as an attorney, he's going to be testifying before you right now as an expert in planning. Understood?
Yep.
Okay.
With regard to the instant application, I did want to review a few things. I did take a look at the comprehensive land use map. In developing that map, the town was foresightful and did designate this property for neighborhood business. So it is consistent with that. The proposed use is consistent with that designation, subject to the approval of the council. In going back and reviewing the August 5th, 1985 Town Council decision, I really don't think I could put an argument any better of the type of use and just plugging in the daycare center use versus the at the time proposed office use. The change is consistent, and I'm reading word for word from the minutes here. Of that August 5th, 1985 meeting. The change is consistent with the neighborhood. World of Wood is on one side, St. Joseph's Church is on the other. The Grange and Bullfield are across the street. The present use is a barbershop business. Here it would be office and professional uses. Such a change is a minor to what is presently used, and such a change would not be detrimental to the character of the area, nor would the change harm public welfare or safety. And I think given the nature of the use that we're proposing here, even going from the medical office use to the daycare center use, it's a less intensive use. Certainly, we've attempted to be as surgical in preparing these applications as possible. I certainly recognize the concerns of the council for any time you do an amendment to your zoning ordinance, and you want to make sure what the follow-on changes and proposals are going to be, and try to be cognizant of those when you're making any kind of a change to the zoning ordinance. Here, we tried to be as specific as we could. Again, with the neighborhood business designation, we do have to create the daycare center use. The other element that we didn't talk about tonight is the fact that there's currently a discrepancy in the zoning ordinance where we have family daycare center defined, but no definition for daycare center. We have nursery, schools defined, yet we don't have and a land use table, but we don't have daycare centers defined, and we don't have a land use category for daycare centers. As far as traffic, as we kind of talked about, the traffic is going to be accessing traffic that's on the road, people going to work that need to take care of their child care needs. There isn't going to be any change to the impervious surface on the property. There's not going to be any change to stormwater flow. As far as capacity of the building, going by space, it's about 62% occupied were the daycare center to be established. And as we talked about, it was the septic system was originally designed for 16 office employees, total employees on the premises. At the time where this to be approved would be 6. We, again, wouldn't anticipate a problem with the septic system, but certainly as we go through the exhaustive process of state licensing and inspections and reviews, I would be very surprised if there was a DEM check in there that should be, and even if there isn't, it's certainly something, Amy and Christine want to have taken care of moving forward, because they don't want to start a business and have a failed, none of us want to have a failed septic system on the site. Yes.
Can you go over, I know you said that there would be parking, can you go over the flow of traffic, how you're going to do that around the building to keep people coming in but leaving probably, I hope, another direction, and also parking for yourselves and, of course, parents sometimes stay to discuss?
There are 14, I believe, parking spaces on the site located to the rear of the building. Unfortunately, it is a dual access in, so anyone going in will have to pull into a parking space, turn around and leave again. There isn't any access on the other side of the building between the building and the church side. I think grade considerations would make that a little bit difficult because there's a significant grade change from the front of the building to the back. The parking lot is painted and striped. And again, as far as the children's safety goes, one of the things when this came up to do the field inspection was to make sure that it was a designated walkway for the children to get from the building up to the play area without having to go into the parking lot.
David, all set, Barbara? You good? Sylvia?
All set.
Scott? You all set?
I was just curious, and this isn't a dig, but I would think that, doesn't most planners in bigger towns have like a master in community planning?
I'm sorry?
I was just surprised you didn't have a master's in community planning, not that that's...
Some
essential,
people
but
go
I
to
just-
planning school, some people go to law school. I
didn't
figured
pick
after
up on
7
that.
years of school, I was all set. I didn't. One designation that is out there that you see a lot of planners have is the AICP designation, which is kind of a professional designation. That was probably the one thing I'd probably look for in the future. But I went to law school and I found it a very good preparation for the planning field. And having been in it for 15 years, I've
It's
seen
a
it.
small point, but I picked up on that, and I know two of us went to the poli-sci program at URI,
Oh.
so I noticed you went there.
Yeah, and certainly, the background and having worked in Wickford, I'm certainly cognizant and sensitive to anytime you've got a small community and changes that are being made for it. And that was something when we were putting the applications together, we tried to be as surgical as possible. Unfortunately, where you're creating a new land use designation, the only way to do that is townwide.
Thank you, Mr. Alban. I guess, does anyone out in the public wish to be heard on this matter? Okay. Well, as you know, we don't render a decision the night of the hearing, so we'll
Yes.
take...
And we're pending the planning board
Yeah.
review on
Planning board's
Wednesday.
meeting on Wednesday of this week, and we'll look forward to their recommendations and analysis, and then we'll figure it out. We'll schedule it when we can.
Okay, do we
Do you want to continue
motion
it
it
to?
to?
Yes.
Yeah.
Make a motion to continue it.
Yeah, let's make a-
I'll make a motion to continue the meeting to a future date. We will discuss with the planning board.
Second.
We don't have to have it precisely.
No, but what you might want to think about doing is continuing the hearing for purposes of receipt of the planning board recommendation and to hear from your zoning building inspector. And for those purposes only. In other words, so that the public hearing would be closed except for those two limited purposes. And you might want to set a date just for control purposes so that you know you've got it down. It doesn't have to be your next meeting, but it might be the meeting after that. Just so that you keep it sort of on your calendar for control.
I'll withdraw my second if you want to withdraw your motion. Withdraw.
Want to redo it and incorporate Pat's suggestions?
All right, so we'll make a motion to continue the hearing to the first meeting in July to discuss with our planning board and with our zoning and building officer the ramifications of the kids' company proposal.
And that for all other purposes, the public hearing is closed.
And for all other purposes, the public hearing is closed. Is everybody happy with that, though?
I
Second.
just had one question. After that, would the council have to continue it again to make a decision?
Yes.
Is there any way we could move it up to the next meeting? Because we'll have the planning board's recommendation, and then we'd be able to decide, ask the council for a decision on the first.
Yeah, I don't see why we couldn't, you know. We've got Lieutenant Governor Roberts at that meeting, talking about Affordable Care Act, but.
At which meeting?
The next meeting.
The next meeting.
Correct. So, yeah, I think we'd be okay.
I'm just trying to get them rolling as
Yeah,
soon as
yeah,
possible.
The state requires us to have everything in by July 1st.
All right, I'll
And the
amend the
local
motion
approvals.
to have it at the next council meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
The
Aye.
amendment.
Right,
Amendment.
that's correct.
The amendment.
Of the amendment, right.
Mr. Council President, Council, thank you very much.
We're
Thank you.
not-
Thank you.
We still have to vote the main motion.
Okay.
Do you get my drift?
But we have to vote on
We
the main motion
we
too.
voted on the amendment.
Okay.
Right, so now the main motion
Needs to
includes
be
that
as
amendment. As amended, thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Next on the agenda is discussion with Superintendent Barry Ritchie. He's been a familiar face for the last month or so.
I so enjoy it.
And a patient went tonight.
I gave you an out. Anyway, welcome, Barry. It's nice to see you. I know when we booked this initially, I was anticipating the budget process to certainly be in our rearview mirror, but as you know, we know it isn't in our rearview mirror. But I guess if anybody has any questions, Barry, I don't know if you have a prepared statement or if you want to just handle some questions.
Yeah, I don't have a prepared statement, but let me thank the council for the invitation tonight. This was supposed to happen quite some time ago, and it's part of my communication plan to visit with each council each year, and the other two councils I visited with much earlier in the year. Just a couple of updates for you. I know there were some questions about litigation and with where things stood with legislation. With members Hurst and Capalbo, testified at the legislature in support of the reinstatement of the regional bonus. It was a couple of weeks ago. I'm not optimistic about that, to be honest with you, but we were certainly there with President Gentz and a parent from Ashaway School also. I'm a little more optimistic about the Cranston-Charahoe resolution introduced in the House to honor the agreement that was made around the director's salaries and the guidance counselor salaries under the old regulations. That seemed to be a little more well-received, and I think it's largely because Cranston is with us in doing that. So I'll keep you posted if I hear any more about that issue. We also testified on charter school legislation that was introduced by the school committee. President Reddish and member Fangiulo from Richmond were with me for that testimony. That created a little bit of interest. We got a few phone calls after. I don't expect any action in this session, but there was some interest with that. We are engaged at this point in litigation with RIDE over the roof at the Current Tech Center. As you might remember, that building was to be deeded over to us last July. We have taken the position that the building has not transferred, the title has not transferred to us because the agreement has not been honored. We discovered issues with the roof and the exterior wall, exterior envelope that were unknown to us. And under the agreement, if there was anything unknown to us, as long as we let the state know by a certain date, that the state would be responsible for it. And we fulfilled that obligation and notified the state prior to the date indicated in the agreement. So we are now taking the position that the building has not transferred title and that it is still a state building. The school committee, by its action at the last school committee meeting, the two leased trailers at the Hope Valley School will be removed, hopefully this summer. So that will save about $18,000 in the budget going forward, not in the first year because of some removal cost that we have to take care of. And in all of the elementary schools, we are doing some security upgrades, some of which I won't get into detail with tonight, but one of them will require all visitors to actually pass through an office before they enter a building. So if you can imagine, I think the easiest school to imagine it in is the Richmond School, where they have that little entryway. There will be a two-buzzer system, one to get into the entryway. There will be a window in that corridor, and then a second buzzer to actually enter the building, into the main building. We're going to try to do that in all of the buildings so that people are actually forced into the office areas as opposed to being able to enter the school, into the general area of the school. So that's the little bit of an update I have for you. If you'd like to talk about budget, we certainly can. And anything else you'd like to talk about?
Barry, just a quick comment on the 152,000 or so that we had, I guess, been awarded.
There was a...
Charo was awarded that, which is Charo's portion. Was that included in the governor's budget?
Actually, we were not awarded it. It was a mediated settlement
Oh, okay.
of litigation. The money has not been included in the budget to the best of my knowledge, but the House is trying to circumvent that by approving a resolution to add to the budget that exact amount.
Okay.
And Representative Walsh and Representative Valencia have been really instrumental in helping us with that.
Thank you. Yeah. Let's see, who wants to have that? Mr. Management Study? How are we doing?
Yes. I would say that we all have our obsessions, and I am a big fan of the management study. I would say that I enjoyed going to the State House, and there was 2 students from Ashway School that were with their mother, and they had a little statement why they liked school, and I think they were the hit of the hearing.
They got applause.
Standing
It was actually their morning pledge, as I remember.
That's right, morning pledge.
Okay.
First time anyone was ever applauded in the state offices. So our Ashaway students were.
I'll go with 5.
Do you have anything else, Scott, Mr. Ritchie?
Yes, I do got about 5 things.
Okay.
Okay, you know, one of the things when they compose a school budget is line item transfers. How often are there line item transfers? Because when people are composing the school budget, we always know that the voters only control the bottom line. And so how frequent are these line item transfers among the different amounts?
There are many transfers. There are thousands of accounts in our budget. I think it's up to like 6,000 accounts, and there are transfers that are often made.
So it's basically routine.
I wouldn't call it routine, but I'm just letting you know that transfers are often made.
Okay, the other, what's your feeling, and I brought this up at the omnibus meeting, so, is working with the other regional school districts, because it seems that we don't have a really strong hand in Providence because of the political realities of being from a rural or small town areas. Do you think there is, how do you feel about making overtures to Bristol, Warren, Forster, Gloucester, Exeter, West Greenwich, as far as strengthening our hand in Providence?
So I think I'd like to use my time productively, and you know, I'm in contact with those superintendents on a regular basis because there are sometimes issues of mutual concern, but I'm not sure that the 5 of us together would have any more clout than we do right now. But certainly, I know you've advocated for that many times, and certainly if you want to call us together, I'll be there.
No, but I'm just saying is on certain pieces of legislation, if we coordinate our efforts and a lot of times you catch somebody off guard when they're going to have a hearing on a bill at the State House because you don't know what's going to be scheduled. And if we had a little more coordination and even having maybe the PTOs or other interested people in those communities, it could make a difference. It might not, but you know, in politics, you take the best shot you got, and
Yeah, so
I think it would strengthen our hand a little bit.
I can't predict what difference it would make, but I know that on something as important as the regional bonuses to all of those districts, how many other people do you see there other than Charahoe?
None.
And they all knew about it. So I'm not optimistic, Scott, that would make a huge difference.
Okay, I'll ask one of the most controversial things, but I wanted to know your views, and I know the school committee is divided, and probably the community is divided, on the so-called TEACH program.
Mm-hmm.
Could you discuss your own feelings? And
Sure. So first of all, the school committee is not divided. The school committee is maybe 2 or 3 votes, maybe 8 to 3, or 9 to 2 even, on that matter. I believe very strongly that people should be compensated at a higher level if they are doing more work or better work. So I believe very much in performance-based compensation. Now, the difficulty with the TEACH program is that it really, from a union perspective, unions don't believe that in that same concept. Unions, enter the discussion with a belief that everyone is equal. I happen to feel differently. President Main of NEHRO and I have had many discussions about this, and we have an honest and respectful disagreement of opinion. But it isn't a part of the negotiated contract that we have. And both parties signed on the dotted line, and it is there. Now, I can tell you that since President May made that public overture to the school committee, the school committee has responded to that. They did so last meeting in executive session, and we're awaiting a response from NEHRO. The school committee does understand that there are many members who are opposed to it, understands the rationale for them being opposed to it, but there are other members that are in favor of it, and that was shown in a third-party study of the program when it was done a few years ago.
Okay, and two more things, and then I yield. And I note that at least two of us, Councilor Thompson and I, both are Charahoe graduates.
Congratulations.
I won't say what years, but the other thing is, one of the concerns is how cognizant is the administration and the school committee over the budget increases in the last 10 years, because more than likely the budget is going to increase in years to come, and this council, dealing with our own town budget, the one we're working on right now, we went into our surplus the same amount, but we're like $75 less, and my council colleagues can correct me. So the Hopkinton Town Council has been very cognizant financially, and we're giving around 75% of our local tax dollars to education. How would you respond to that? I mean, because apparently it was well down in the $40 million range, I believe, 10 years ago.
So I heard those, I read those flyers also that said that we had a 30% increase over 10 years, and that's absolutely not true. Absolutely not true.
What number would you say would be?
I would say we're in the 15% range over the 10-year period, which is well under the rate of inflation. The impact on the member towns over the last 5 years has been 0.05%.
Okay, and the final one, my favorite baby, the management study. Why not have a management study, particularly on labor costs? A lot of communities, I think of Central Falls, I think of the Central Coventry Fire District, there's a lot of government entities who have gotten into financial problems, and I'm not saying we would necessarily get in financial problems not doing a management study, but why not a management study? It would have somebody who doesn't have a dog in the fight, if you will, who would look at staffing and things of that nature and say, because the big debate, for example, that we recently had was whether or not we should have a dean of students or the assistant principals should do disciplinary stuff or things of that nature. And I'm certainly not qualified, but why not have somebody who has some qualifications, who has no ties to Charahoe, to make a recommendation on personnel?
So let me respond in two ways. First of all, I'm not aware of a big debate about the deans of students. I'm aware of a suggestion that was made that we not have deans, and I think that would be inherently unsafe. We have 1,200 kids in our high school, and to think that there's not always something happening would be unrealistic. I'm not opposed to a management study. I'm just opposed to paying for it. I don't think it's a good use of money. I think there are people on the school committee who are certainly watching the budget, and I watch the budget, and we've identified upwards of 35 positions that have been eliminated over the last few years. So it's not, we're not, may I finish? So we're not adding positions, we're subtracting from our size, and we're subtracting because our enrollment's dropping. As I indicated in a letter to the editor, it's unrealistic to think that because 20 or 30 kids leave the district in a given year that our enrollment is going to suddenly go negative. Our budget is suddenly go negative. It's not a likely, but over the long term, you should expect to see less than inflationary pressure on our budget. So I think 0.05% impact on the member towns over the 5-year period, with three of the 5 years actually being in the negative territory, is respectable.
I just want to respond to that, and then I'll let other councilors. The concern was if you have a management study, and one number somebody suggested might be 125,000, you could probably eliminate one employee count in that benefit package, and that would equal that amount, it would seem.
So perhaps that employee's been eliminated anyway, without the management study. But
I'm
again, I'm not
just putting that out, and I don't want to hog the time for my other council colleagues, but
Thank you, Scott. Sylvia?
Could you talk to me or us about the charter schools?
What would you like to know?
Well, I understand you have a position about them, and all I know is Charahoe pays, if children want to go there, they pay.
Yeah.
And how did and I didn't research the law.
Okay.
So I don't know how it all works.
So
Could you give us a little scenario?
Sure. There are 3 charter schools, Kingston Hill Academy, the Compass School, and the Green School in West Greenwich or Western Coventry, that we have to provide transportation to by state law. They're in our transportation region. So for those 3 schools, we are obligated to provide tuition. I call it tuition. The state would call it the local share. So the local share and transportation. Our students could also choose to go to other charter schools. So for example, we had a student at the Rhode Island Nurses Institute in Providence for a couple of years. For those students, we only pay the local share. We don't pay the transportation because they're out of our transportation region. So that's one category. Then there's a category of state-approved schools that have a statewide catchment area. A good example of that would be the Metropolitan Career and Technical Center. So there's a Metropolitan Center in Providence and a Metropolitan Center in Newport. By state law, even though we run our own Career and Technical Center, we have to pay tuition for our kids to go to the Metropolitan Career and Technical Center because that school has been designated as a statewide, as having a statewide catchment area. So the school committee took a position a couple of years ago that it would no longer pay for students to go to the Met unless they were already currently students there. So we haven't paid for new students to go to the Met, and that is being challenged now. That the state is saying, you know, or the Met is saying you have to pay the tuition for those students. I would say we operate our own center, and if we have a program that's not offered in our center and they want to go for that program, then that's fine. But we don't know that because we never see the kids who go to the Met. They just go to the Met and we get the bill. So we don't know that we don't offer a program that could suit their needs. So those are the 2 categories that those schools kind of fall into.
Who determines the local share? How do you know how much to pay them?
The state determines the local share based on our cost per student, and there are a couple of other factors too. Our cost per student and how much. There's a state share and a local share. And for some districts, the state share is higher, say like a Central Falls. The state share is much higher there than it is here. So it's based on state share and local share.
And I'm going to say something. You tell me if I'm right or wrong. Did this all start because, or I guess when the charter school started, at some point it had to, this had to happen. I don't know when this started, how long ago.
20 years.
And I'm guessing that somebody passed a law and said that since your school doesn't provide these services or doesn't provide them at the level we think the charter school can, then you have to pay. How is it you have to pay?
Originally, when charter schools came into being, it was about creating competition against traditional public schools, or for traditional public schools, and also to incubate new ideas. So charter schools would incubate the ideas, and they would get, transferred over to public schools. Now, in some ways, that's worked. Like, for example, we used to have a half-day kindergarten, and I recommended to the school committee that they go with a full-day kindergarten for only one reason, because we were losing kids to the charter schools in kindergarten. They would come back to us in grade 1, and we were paying their tuition to go to a full-day program when our own kids were getting a half-day program. So in that regard, the competition did work, and we started a full-day program, and we have less kids going to charter schools in kindergarten now. So it was for those 2 main reasons. One was the competition, and one was to incubate new ideas.
I guess then I would ask, I know this, I suppose it's different for the different schools, but the different charter schools, but what's the difference if the child stays in Charahoe and there's a cost, or the child goes somewhere else and there's a cost to the taxpayer, which is cheaper?
Look at it this way, if you can. Let's suppose there's a grade 2 at Ashaway School with 22 children in it, and one goes to a charter school. There is no cost I can reduce at Ashaway School in that grade 2 classroom because one child went to a charter school. Yet, I have to send $12,000 to that charter school. So it's much less expensive for you to educate those 113 students in Charahoe than it is to pay the local share to send them to the charter school. Because it's not as simple. If they all came out of one classroom or one school, and I can close the classroom down and reduce a teacher and maybe take a bus off the road, then it would work.
Okay, and I guess it gets even more complicated when I throw into the mix, the towns pay differently.
Yeah.
No, so.
I'm not even thinking that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Forget it, I'm not going to go in, I'm not going to bother anymore. The other thing I'd like to talk to you about is audits and
What, please? I'm sorry.
audits.
Audits.
The usual audits you have. For instance, if I pick up the audit and I want to look for capital, things you spent on the elementary schools or whatever, I can look in the audit and I can see that there were expenses. I may not know exactly what they were, and all I do is ask, and they'll say, well, there's the Hope Valley School repointing the bricks, that was done a certain year. So I can see capital in there. What happens with the 2010 project? Is that going to be a separate audit, or does that become part of the Charahoe audit? How do you deal with that?
Let me find out how that's. I'm thinking it's going to be part of the Charahoe audit, and I think that the audit subcommittee could make a request that be audited. But let me find out for you and get back to you.
Okay.
All set, Sylvia?
Yes.
Okay. Barbara?
Do you want to do anything? Just because it's all, so we're all discussing on lots of
Go
different
ahead, I'll
levels?
go last.
I know, you always do. I was trying to give you a shot.
No, that's okay.
I had a question. I want to continue on one of the ones that Sylvia brought up. When a child goes to the Met Center and you just have to pay them, but you can't know what program they're in, because we might have that program at Charahoe's Career and Tech. So what you've said is that when they go to the Met, you give them money, but you can't ask what program the child's in?
Well, the thinking has always been that if the program was available here, then we would not send a student elsewhere.
Well, that's reasonable.
Right. So, but those students will register directly with the Met prior to any conversation with us.
But then
there is no conversation with us.
But I mean, then why can't you go to the Met school and say, we need to know what they're doing?
The department would take the position that once they've registered in a school, that we're obligated to pay.
Yes, but can't you take an alternate program, an alternate perspective and say, we're happy to do that, we just want to know what program they're in to make sure we don't have the same? Or perhaps if many kids are going for a program we don't have, we'd love to be able to start it.
The Met does not offer traditional career and technical programs. To give you a little bit of a history, the Metropolitan Career and Technical Center was named so they would qualify for Perkins funding, federal Perkins funding, which is career and technical funding. So you won't go to the Met and find a carpentry shop.
Or a nursing program.
Or I don't want to say nursing, but I know that you won't find a typical shop in the Metropolitan Career and Technical Center. That's not to say that we can't offer that student a similar experience that they would receive at the Met. I think we have the resources to do that, but the state would say that because the Met has a statewide catchment, that regardless of where the student comes from, and even though the center is 50 feet from my door, we would have to send the kids to that school and pay the local share.
But you can't even ask to see whether you have an identical program.
Well, I think I can ask, and I can just look at their program of studies and find out what they're offering.
Well, but I mean, finding out what that specific student is getting.
Right. I mean, technically, they don't have to tell me that because they're not enrolled in Charahoe, so they're not really our students. So they have some privacy rights. But I probably could figure that out easily enough.
Right, because I think privacy rights for a student's education doesn't make a lot of sense. I understand medical, but let's not kind of mix that one up. I'd like to know about the Career and Technical Center and where you see the growth of it and where you see that particular program going, because I know you have been adding to it, you have been condensing it.
Yeah.
Where do you think the program's going?
We plan to, well, a little bit of history. We've added HVAC, and we eliminated small engines about 4 years ago. We added electrical and alternate energy sources maybe 3 years ago. And last year, we started a criminal justice program. The enrollment at the Career and Tech Center is as high as it's ever been, and will be that way next year. And that's a good thing, because that brings in revenue from surrounding districts. We also picked up North Kingstown and Exeter West Greenwich, because they have joined our transportation area. Now, those kids could still go to another Career and Tech Center, but those districts would not have to transport them there. So if they come to Charahoe, they'll get transportation. We are looking to take our existing family consumer science program and take the part of it that deals with early childhood education, which is a teacher assistant training component, and turn that into a career and technical program. And take our agricultural sciences program and turn that into a career and tech program. And the reason is that if we don't offer those as career and tech programs, then our kids could opt to go to another school to take those programs, even though we have the courses already in place. So we want to make that conversion in the next year for those two other areas.
For the agricultural sciences and
And
for
the teacher assistant training.
And then do you also have CAD programs?
I'm sorry.
Do you have CAD programs?
The CAD, yeah, the CAD is part of
CAD
the
programs?
drafting, yeah.
Drafting?
Yeah.
So that kids can learn that. But I mean, even if you had the agricultural sciences, but if they decided to go to the med school because the med school has agricultural sciences, you could never know about it.
According to the Department of Education, you are correct.
But in reality, they don't have agricultural science.
I don't think so. But
I don't
to
think
give you
so either.
to give you a better example, Narragansett is thinking about starting an agricultural sciences track, because with the new career and tech regulations, any high school can run career and tech programs. And if we don't offer it, then we would have to transport and pay tuition to Narragansett.
But because it's Narragansett, you can know where the child's going and you can say, I'm sorry, we have a program, you can't go.
But if we didn't have the program designated as a career and tech, approved career and tech program, it wouldn't matter if we had the courses or not. The child could still go.
Okay, so you're going to make sure, so you're basically having the Career and Tech Center grow, which I think is really good, because a lot of the students in our area are hands-on.
Well, it's a pathway. So I think of it as a pathway.
Pathway to work.
And you know, there's this misconception that if you are enrolled in a career and tech program, you are excluded from a 4-year college opportunity. That is absolutely not true.
I would agree with that, and I'm very glad. I'm actually very pleased that the Career and Tech is growing, because I think that's a plus for all of the students in the entire area. And I'm also pleased that there being a lot more of the advanced placement classes, and I'm hoping you're going to do even more of those with the computer, on the computer labs, when you can do that. On that issue, do you have any answers on the one-to-one program, just on what kind of things you're going to be using by now?
Yeah, so let me just back up 1 minute. We have the, we already offer virtual learning currently. So if there's an AP class that we do not offer, our students can take that class virtually.
And how do they do that? Do they get in a classroom with a teacher that oversees the classroom?
No,
but they're all learning different things?
We purchase 40 seats a year from a company called Virtual High School. And generally, we have a lab that's kind of a multi-purpose lab that kids can use for the virtual learning or the library.
And then there's a teacher that oversees that lab?
Yes.
Okay, that makes very good sense. But have you made any choices on the
Right.
one-to-one?
So,
I know Dave probably has more questions on that, so I don't
Yeah.
want to get into details on it,
Okay.
because I'm hoping you do.
He's not sure. He's kind of going both ways.
I just want to know if you have come to some
Right.
conclusion.
So the selection committee that's been meeting for quite a number of months now is recommending to me that we look at Apple products. And they would prefer a laptop over a tablet.
Oh.
So I am in conversation now with Apple representatives to do some cost analysis. And I don't know if that's, I don't know if that's doable, to be honest with you. So I don't have a definitive answer at this point, but that's the direction they would like us to go.
So they're looking, at least they know they want to look at Apple but they think they want laptops instead of iPads.
Instead of
Sounds
tablets,
a lot more
right.
expensive.
Well, the life is longer too, though, so it may actually even out, because you get additional years out of a laptop than you would of a
And
tablet.
you don't want to give it away to a kid when they graduate either. I'd like to know, what is the growth of homeschooling and charter schools with the students?
Homeschooling is actually a little bit down.
It's gone down?
Not a lot, it's just a little bit down from where it was. And charter school is pretty flat. We're about 113, I think, and that includes the MAT and anywhere we're sending kids.
Because I think my concern with charter schools is that if we're a higher ranked charter school or a higher ranked school in the district, is that the charter schools, I understand, are elementary and middle, but the children come back to us for high school?
Well, the Green School is high school.
Right, but only one of them is.
Yes.
But that means if they are not up at the level of our students, we have to tutor them up to the level. So we've done a double set of teaching.
I think it's pretty reasonable to assume that if a student opts, generally reasonable to assume that if a family opts into a charter school, that family is pretty involved in that child's education to make that kind of a move. So I would think that those kids are being well served generally in charter schools.
Okay. And the security issues is my last question before it goes on. I know that you're working on those. Obviously, you were talking about the buzzing kids in twice. Do you find that that's moving along smoothly? I know there's 3 police departments that have to work on it, as well as everybody and their brothers.
So moving along smoothly would not be the way I would describe it. It's more about the age of our buildings and trying to make them, fit a modern purpose. It's not easy to retrofit an older building that wasn't designed to be secure. When you look at the high school, I think we counted 26 doors that anyone could walk out of, or anyone could prop open with a little stick or something to hold it for somebody else. To think that building's going to be totally secure I think is unrealistic. The Ashaway School with that big glass foyer area, it's not ever going to be totally secure. But there are things we can do to make it better, and those things we are doing. So it's partly the age of the buildings, it's partly meeting fire codes and building codes. You're doing these renovations, and every time you do something different, you have to meet all the new codes. So that also creates a whole additional round of problems. The 3 police chiefs have been phenomenal. I cannot say enough about the cooperation we have had from the 3 chiefs. We just had lunch together 2 weeks ago, and we're doing some security measures in the offices that I don't want to really get into publicly tonight, but they have been phenomenal. And we've had a Hopkinton officer on campus most mornings, not all day, but just being visible in the cruiser. Charlestown continues to send an officer to the middle school. So I think that's really good that kids from all 3 towns see cruisers from all 3 towns. I think that's a very positive thing. That's a level of cooperation we did not have before.
I think that's really a plus. I'm really pleased that you have them, and they actually, I hope, get out of the cars too and say hello.
That they do. Yeah, I didn't mean to imply that they were sitting there. No, that's true.
Thank you, Barbara. Mr. Dave.
I'm going to leave now. Suchi. Good evening.
Good evening.
You should probably know I'm not a fan of the budget.
So let me correct your letter.
Please.
Because the superintendent did not recommend the use of surplus. The superintendent recommended reductions in the budget.
Right. As you well know, there is a large difference between level spending and level funding. You can by the use of surplus. I don't want to go on this because I've discussed it in the letter, and I've discussed it with you when we met last Tuesday. But you have to remember that this town may be level funding its share of the Charahoe budget in the past.
Level contribution.
Level contribution, we'll put it that way, that's right. But the spending costs for Charahoe, the school district, have gone up.
That's correct.
And the only way that can happen is if you've applied more revenue to the expenditures to create a level, my term, level funding situation.
I agree with you.
Okay. There has been a use of surplus year after year after year by the district.
That's correct.
Therefore, there must be a surplus year after year after year coming into the district.
You have an expert right there.
Absolutely. And that's what bothers me. It bothers me that you can only find $54,000 the other night to reduce the budget by, and I'll bet you dollars to donuts that sometime around this time next year, we're going to have a real big surplus in this coming year's budget, regardless of whether it's passed or not passed, simply because it's happened year after year after year, and it's just built in somehow.
Well,
and correct me if I'm wrong with this. I'll give you an example. In this teach program every year for the last three or 4 years since fiscal year 2011, you've allocated $214,100. In actuality, in 2011, you spent $62,000. That's a lot of extra surplus floating around. The next year, you allocated $100, and you spent $95,000. That's another $140,000 that goes right into the surplus fund.
So
it's really easy when it happens like that, because you can just say, oh, look at, you don't have to pay any more. Here's some surplus to level off your funding, but the costs keep going up.
So let me say two things about that. I could not agree with you more that the use of surplus over the long term is not a good thing. And that was not part of my recommendation to the school committee. When after the first vote, my recommendation was to reduce the budget by $430,000 that would have brought it to a maintenance of effort budget.
Right.
And those were all reductions in spending. Nothing in my recommendation included the use of surplus. So I just want to make that clear, because I agree with you on that. I think it's dangerous to use that level of surplus, because we'll have to make it up next year.
Of course.
Yes. So secondly, and Sylvia who's done so much homework on this, and I want to thank her for that. You know, we sat down a couple of weeks ago, and we showed her some of the ways that I use the term the onion has to be peeled when you talk about surplus. And I think both of us learned something in that conversation. You used the TEACH program as an example, and I would tell you that because those decisions of the TEACH program are not made until June, every year we ask the school committee to reserve those funds for the following year. That's why you don't see the expenditures in that given year. So I can trace that money for you.
The budget for 2011, Superintendent, says you only spent $64,000 on the 214.
So
right here, it's right here, 62,000. Excuse me. This is your budget.
I know it's my budget, but I can show you how that money's been held in a reserve account for the following year. I mean, I don't have it in front of me right now, but I can show you on paper how that's been done. So there are. Let me finish. So there are other examples like that. We talked about the other day about healthcare, and part of the surplus includes the excess in the West Bay Collaborative if we've had a positive claims experience. So when the surplus is reported, that amount of money is included in that surplus. Yet if we took that, our premiums would go sky high because it's held in the West Bay account, but included in our surplus.
Okay.
So that being said, I am not arguing the point that we can be tighter in some of those accounts. So as Sylvia and I discussed 2 weeks ago, one of my tasks for this summer is to really peel that onion away and find where there is truly unexplained surplus, especially in the salary accounts. I think that's probably the biggest one. And then make a reduction in that area. So I'm not discounting what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you it's a little more complex and complicated than the way it's being presented.
And I don't want to belabor the situation for expediency's sake. So you're telling me that the difference between $62,000 that you spent in fiscal year 2011 and the $214,000 that you allocated, that difference, that so-called surplus, the excess amount, is rolled over into the next fiscal year for use in the TEACH program? Is that what you're saying?
So what I'm saying to you is that if I had the opportunity to have that in front of me and could have I just don't have it with me right now. I'm just telling you that we don't spend the allocation in the year in which it's budgeted because the decisions about the award of TEACH money is made too late in June to spend it by July 1st. But I'm happy to sit with you and walk you through that.
Well, we've got 3 years worth of, we've got 3 years
Okay,
of budget figures here. And I've got 214, I've got 4 years actually. Your proposal is for 214 again, 214, I say, $1,000. And and you've spent 62 one year, the next year you spent 95, and we don't know what has been spent this past year. So I would think that just through looking at this, unless it's being spent someplace else, it should be shown in a budget, which I don't believe it is.
So-
Then it runs up as surplus, and then the surplus goes into the general surplus account, which I'll use that term rather than a more derogatory term for such accounts. And this money occasionally is taken out of there, apparently with the school committee's permission, and applied where you have a deficit. I suspect that happens on occasions.
No,
So the surplus stays there until
the next budget,
the next budget.
unless there's an extraordinary situation.
Can you explain why we have such a large surplus every year? Every year it seems like there's millions of dollars in this surplus, in this general fund account, or whatever term you want to use for it.
Yep.
And it bothers me because that's taxpayers' money. That's my money, their money. And it bothers me that if you've got extra money left over and you don't have it allocated or earmarked for something, I think it should go back to the people.
Well, it goes back to the people in the next budget, generally. I mean,
Back to the people in the next budget to cover the costs of the next budget,
right,
the increased costs of the next budget.
by policy. That's the policy.
Bad business.
And I would also tell you that this council has long advocated that the district use all of its surplus each year. So it was this council, I believe, that advocated that there be a policy in place, that we hold between 2% and 4% of the previous year's expenditures. And this council has advocated that we use all of that surplus each year, and we did it this year.
I think you can probably meet with Superintendent Ritchie, I guess, on that particular aspect of the budget, and we've got a few more things we've got to take up.
But anyhow,
so-
like I say, we've got a full slate here. Thank you for coming over though. And please don't take it personal.
Oh, believe me, I'm well beyond taking it personal.
Whether the letter to the editor is themed that way, I blame the school committee members just as much because they can speak up and they can say, hey, I want to do this or I want to do that, but they don't seem to do that. And they have to remember that they're taxpayers also, and every dollar that's spent on anything, and I'm not denying education. I like education here. I think we've got a wonderful school system, but by golly, it seems to be a very costly situation down there. And every year we wind up with a surplus, and every year we use that surplus to pay off part of the next year's budget.
So we spend, just to close, we spend about 97.5% of our budget every year. A little bit less than what you spend in Hopkinton. You're closer to 90 and change.
I think there's some fat.
I
think there's some fat in that
So-
97%.
So David, I look at myself as a learner all of the time. So if you can help me in some way through this complex, I'm happy to take your advice and sit down with you. Sylvia has been great in terms of showing us what her thinking is around surplus, and we'll look at it.
I'm not trying to second think you on any of this.
Well, you
stuff.
can. I'm not, we're not perfect.
Okay, what about this transportation? What about, I don't want to do that to you, but it just seems that the surplus, it is always a surplus every year. It's a big fat piece of cash, and we apply it to the next budget.
Well, I hope there will always be a surplus, maybe not as big as you'd like not to see it, but I would like to always think that we will have a surplus, because we're not looking for deficits.
Not too much.
The only question I had, Barry, is procedurally, now that the Charahoe budget has been defeated twice, it's going up again for the third time, June 18th. Assuming it gets turned down again, what are your thoughts on, as of July 1, can you just maybe explain to the council what?
The Charahoe Act is very clear that if there is no budget in place on July 1st, that the towns will contribute at the same level as 1 year ago.
Okay. Okay.
Now, obviously, we would
If it
we would
gets
adjust for enrollment.
If it gets approved, then that latest cut of 54,000.
If it's approved, the latest cut would be in effect.
Incorporated. Okay. Okay, that's all I have. Yes.
Back up briefly, the VOTEC, who determines what out-of-district students pay for the VOTEC? How is that determined?
There is actually there's no regulation that governs how tuition is charged, believe it or not. RIDE has come up with a formula that they have said to us that if you use our formula, we will always defend you in case there's a conflict. So we use the RIDE formula. And it's based on minutes in the program and minutes of special education services and all of that to determine what the tuition should be. It's not a flat rate.
Okay. Just one last comment to make sure that you understand that over the years, different councils have talked about surplus. Tom Buck, for instance, would always say, I want that surplus used for the elementary schools. You know, you get this extra money, use it to repair the schools. And I'd say, well, in the end, it still affects the bottom line, whether you call it capital expense or you call it the revenue. I mean, it gets used. But my argument with the policy, et cetera, is there was a lot of money sitting in accounts or sitting in the bank, wherever it was, and it had built up. And when we all understood that, we didn't like that. And the school committee went about giving some of it back. And then they decided, well, we ought to have a policy. And so they developed a policy. I believe that the ideal is to have the budget tight so that at the end of the year it's positive and there's something left over, but not to these amounts. And so as you tighten up your budget, these surpluses will go away and it'll gradually wean us off of it. So those line items, that revenue thing will get smaller. That's the ideal. I do not believe that the school committee should have any policy because the Hope Valley School, what did it cost, $1.5 million? How much that? It was like $1.5 million.
Crazy amount.
Yeah,
about
to
that.
repoint the bricks. Unexpected, not budgeted, bang. But you had to do it because you wouldn't have a school.
Correct.
You weren't going to be able to open. So it had to get done, whatever the cost. And so everybody was like, wow, gee, good thing we have that policy. We've got that money we can count on. As it turned out, there was plenty of money, though, within the budget that could have paid for it. So whether they took it from the surplus or not. But anyway, in the end, my point is towns need a fund balance, a surplus, an accumulated surplus, and we call it a fund balance, and we need 2 months. So our checks don't bounce. When the bills come in, we haven't gotten our taxes in yet. So we need those 2 months of a reserve, of a fund balance. The school doesn't need that. You send a bill, it gets paid. Bang. Send a bill to that's my opinion, that we don't need it. And so, in all the years, every time somebody, the Hopkinton Council collectively or individually, we'd go to the hearings, we would say, you know, we'd talk about that fund balance or the surplus.
I agree, yes.
But we also asked for decreases in the expenses in the same breath.
So
Please do your very best this summer to tighten up your budget.
So using Barbara's words, I'm going to try really hard to be less conservative.
Less conservative.
That's what you'd like, right? Less conservative?
Less conservative.
And in terms of the policy, Sylvia, the auditors have recommended that we hold 8%. I don't know if you remember that from the Finance Council, when the Finance Council came up with that policy. The auditors wanted us to hold 8% in surplus, which, you know, the Finance Council thought was a little bit much. But being a regional district that can't go directly to a municipality, I think it's a little bit different than it would be for a westerly that might need some money from the municipal side than for us to go to 3 towns if there was a need. So I don't think the policy is unreasonable, but I do understand the concern.
Quickly, Barbara.
It is actually very quick.
I was going to go.
I'm sorry, it is really quick, because I want to make sure I'm clear of something. July 1, we're going to have the level, whatever it is, it's going to be a level funded balance of some nature.
So the way I report it is the towns will contribute the exact same thing they contributed 1 year ago.
Next year, so this budget is the same budget as the year before on the expense side. It has a little change, I think, but it's very tight from the year before. It's a level fund.
So the way I would phrase that is that the towns will contribute exactly what was contributed 1 year ago.
Correct.
Yeah.
Next year, when you give us a budget and it's voted down over and over and over, July 1 will be the same amount as this July 1.
The Charahoe Act won't have changed, I don't think.
I'm sorry, what?
The Charahoe wouldn't have that.
Exactly. So what I'm saying is that we really, trying to be conservative really matters, because next year...
You want me to be less conservative?
No, I'm just thinking next year, if the people are just as angry, they'll vote it down again and again, and you're going to be back to the same budget. and the next year is going to work the same way. And that's going to start having real ramifications. But if they are, because it was really 3-to-1, 2-to-1 easily, but more like 3-to-1, they voted it down. But if they do it again next year, the problems are going to compound.
So there's nothing
For
to
the
argue
school.
about with that. I mean, you know, ultimately, the community will decide what the
Right.
schools look like.
Correct.
I just hope that next year, when the debate occurs, that people receive accurate information.
I think if they see real reductions in expenses that Sylvia was talking about, we've talked about, then you're going to see people saying, okay. But if you don't see it, I think you're going to have the same anger come forward again. And if it does, you're going to have 3 years of a level, then 4 years of level, and it's going to become a problem, I think, for the school system.
You know, I get the whole
Yeah.
expense side argument, and you know, my experience doing this is that everyone wants to cut expenses until it impacts them. So, like, we took 2 buses off the road. I can promise you that there will be calls from people saying the buses are too crowded. And why did you take those buses off the road?
And for instance, I want foreign language teachers in the elementary
Right.
school.
So there's a healthy balance.
Right, I would something reduced.
I'll do my
some-
best.
Some assistance reduced so I can get something else.
Thanks, Barry. Appreciate
welcome.
your time.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
coming, really
Thank you.
appreciate
Good luck with
it.
everything.
I'll be back again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This was actually very sweet.
We'll be here.
This was very useful. This
Yeah,
was a
oh,
very
yeah,
good
it's nice to
idea.
have one-on-one. Okay, folks, next on the agenda is the consent agenda. To approve the town council meeting minutes of May 15, 2013.
I make a motion to approve the town council meeting minutes of May 15, 2013.
Okay, any discussion, anything on that, all those in favor, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. First, public forum. Anyone out there wishing to speak? Okay. Next, town manager's report. Bill McGarry.
Thank you. On May 14th, I attended a meeting at the town solicitor's office in Providence to discuss the status of the Canachet Wood subdivision project. The meeting was spearheaded by Assistant Solicitor Scott LeVake, and attorneys and representatives of the town and Women's Development Corporation attended this meeting. And basically, it was a very lengthy meeting, but it was, the purpose of which was discuss how to resolve the few remaining engineering and construction issues that still exist on Cardinal Lane and Hopkinton Hill Road in that subdivision. This was a very productive meeting, and hopefully the final work will be completed to the satisfaction of the town in a timely fashion. We're very, very close to resolving all the problems on Cardinal Lane, and Scott Levesque is looking at the problems between the developer and the contractor on Hopkinton Hill Road, and hopefully we'll be able to move that project along. On May 22nd, we convened the third job description committee meeting in the HPD conference room. We now have 37 full-time and permanent part-time job descriptions that have been completed to date. I'm currently in the process of reviewing them, and then once that review is completed, they'll be returned to their respective employees and their supervisors for final review. And then we plan to keep them on file and post them on the town's website. May 23rd, at the request of several town employees, Finance Director Laura Kenyon and I convened a pension seminar in the Town Hall Council Chambers. Mrs. Elizabeth O'Boyle, a consultant for the pension group, which is the financial services agent under contract by the Rhode Island Employees Retirement System, made a presentation and a general overview to all the employees in attendance as to how that system worked. She then conducted one-on-one personal interviews at the employee's request regarding several pension situations. And she has also agreed to return in 4 to 6 weeks to make the same informative presentation to those employees who are unable to attend that particular seminar. May 23rd, I had met with Jim Lamphere, Tim Teft, and Jim Riordan of Fuss and O'Neill, and we conducted a very lengthy conference call with Jennifer Stout and Margarita Chadaran of Rhode Island DEM, Office of Water Resources, and that was regarding the status and timetable of the town stormwater management plan. The town, DEM, and Fuss and O'Neill are currently working together to develop this extensive plan. We've done a significant amount of work on it, and we're planning to make a presentation before the planning board Wednesday night, June 5th, to just keep them abreast of the plan and get some input from them, and then hopefully present a final draft to the town council sometime in July of this year. May 23rd, I met with the Chief Palmer and IBPO President Sergeant Robert Kenyon of the Police Department at the HPD, and I hand-delivered to them a copy of the proposed 3-year police contract that had been previously agreed upon tentatively by the town and the union negotiating committees. Sergeant Kenyon and the IBPO attorneys are currently reviewing the document, and hopefully they'll present it to the police union members in the near future, ratify the agreement in a timely fashion so that we can present it to the town council for consideration and final approval in June or July of this year. And lastly, May 28th, with the assistance of Chief Dave Palmer, I swore in 2 new police officers who were hired as replacement officers for department members who retired last year. The new police officers are Jonathan Reif, age 25, of Warwick, Rhode Island, and Alexander Villanus, age 22, of Wakefield. Both did very well in the police academy, and they both began work on May 28th. And we tentatively anticipate a ceremonial swearing in before the town council on or about July 1st.
Thanks, Bill. Any questions for the town manager, folks? Okay.
Other than say you've been busy.
The 23rd.
Do we have somebody else who speaks Spanish now? I was so proud that we finally had someone last time. Thank God.
Next on the agenda is under new business is to discuss and consider a vote regarding a resolution opposing Senate Bill 0322.
I would like to thank our tax assessor for her input on the legislation.
Thanks, Chris. Chris, if you want to just come up, I just had a quick question. I wanted to just state publicly, you know, I know Mike McCaffrey, and, you know, to introduce legislation that really is biased in one direction, just, again, doesn't sit well with me, and it certainly doesn't bode well for the average taxpayers that want to build a house, and shame on him, but anyway, we'll send this resolution, and hopefully it'll have an effect, I hope. The only question I had is, you mentioned about a twilight?
Yes, a sunset clause. And
sunset clause, okay.
That would be in a proposed sub-A that I believe the Assessors Association helped put together. So they wanted to start with 1 year, but it looks like, I was talking to someone on the legislative committee today, and it looks like they're bumping it out to 2 years, is what it might be if it does pass. But
because I think under Senator McCaffrey, wasn't it a 2-year period for his?
Yeah, well, I think in the original one, there is no sunset clause. It would be that if there was a sub-A, or if they added to what's on the table right now, there isn't any kind of sunset clause at all. No one's sponsored it yet, that I know of.
So you're saying there was not a sunset clause in his initial bill, and you're suggesting, based on recommendations from the Assessors Association and whatnot, that we should put one in? I would think we should.
If it was to go forward,
right,
yeah,
right, okay.
They should consider definitely a timeline on it, and that, and just some clerical. Typically, people don't report to the collector; they report to the assessor because we put values in place. So just little things, if it was to go forward.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah.
So certainly it has my full support. We'll start over here with Mr. Bill Hurst.
My only concern is that it's a question, well, there's a couple of things. Number one, it's a question of fairness for people who are, building their own property. And I found it interesting that people talk about the economy, but all businesses, and home building is a business that people make a living from, and all businesses have the ups and downs depending upon the economy and what type of business it is. Also, I think from an academic point of view, I was a political science professor. I imagine teaching state and local government. This is a great special interest bill for the Rhode Island Home Builders Association, which I know Representative Kennedy brought that out at the last meeting. My concern is, should we really consider a substitute like giving somebody a year? Because it's still, that 1 year would still be unfair to those people still developing their property, even if they don't have an occupancy permit. It still increases the value of that property.
Exactly, because everyone's valued as of December 31st, and in Hopkinton, we have proration. So if you receive a CO, then you will get at full value at that time, or close to it. But if, let's just say you're halfway done with your house as of December 31st, we value as of that date, December 31st. So that was what will be on the next year. Now let's say you hit on hard times, or you can't sell the house that you're in, but you're halfway through this next home. The typical typical taxpayer that's going to be custom building their home without a builder would get taxed on half of what is what is there, and maybe it's at half construction, but then they still have to pay on the home that they're living in. So this would benefit only the builders, that they don't have to pay for what they have, but everybody else that's not a builder would be paying their own fair share, because we do value everything in town as of December 31st of every year. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, it used to be on the old tax books on December 31st, but it's a question that I think a lot of people don't realize, that home building is a business. And it's one thing to, and everybody that's in business, depending upon the business, is cyclical. So, and also I was really impressed by the fact that the state of Massachusetts and Connecticut haven't done this. And of course, Rhode Island is smaller than the average American county in land area, and yet our two neighboring states by land, Massachusetts and Connecticut, haven't done this.
Yes.
Thanks, Scott. Sylvia?
This is nothing more, whether it's got a sunset clause or not, it's just legalized robbery. That's all. And it's shameful. And if it happens, I'm going to be like, let's move to Canada. It's terrible. It's shameful.
It only benefits the developers, and it's not good. Not a good bill.
I can't even believe they get to even type this stuff up.
Yeah, well, they did, and that's why we're opposing it.
Jeez.
And if I have a chance, I'll stop and see Mr. Mike myself in Warwick.
Please
But anyway,
do.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a follow-up question? Do you know of anything, what is this, this legislation is currently in the legislature?
I believe the committee is considering it. So I talked to Representative Kennedy because I was unsure. I had an unsigned sub-A that was passed through the Assessors Association, but it hasn't been sponsored by anybody, because I think, and you should really talk to the representative because I'm not sure, I think they have to pass it first before they would make a sub-A. They're still considering the first parts of the whole
Because
document.
the time frame right now in the legislature is usually in June, or maybe even into July. They rush all these bills through at midnight or whatever, and so I'm really concerned about the timing. I'll have to contact Representative Kennedy and ask him, Representative Valencia, the status of this bill, because maybe some of us will have time to go up there and testify.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. Barbara, do you have anything?
It's basic anathema. Sorry. It's horrible. I agree with you all. You too. Just ludicrous. Yeah, it really makes you speechless. It's just it's anathema. It's a really horrible thing to do to normal human beings who now have to pay so much more than a builder who has a lot more money than they do.
And just a side note to Barbara's comment, builders are aware of the economy, very aware of the economy, and they know if things may not sell or may sell. But that's up to them to put out a product when they think it's going to sell reasonably. But, to seek specific relief from a group that knows very well how the market works, I can't support this. Anyway, that's my side note on it. But David, go ahead.
I don't know, maybe if I don't use my car, I shouldn't be taxed for my car.
Hey, there you go.
There you go. Maybe if I do.
As long as you don't sit in the seat.
And when I'm on vacation too, and I'm not in my house, I don't want to be taxed for that week that I wasn't in my house. That's a selfish bill, it's a bad bill, it's a horrible situation.
I'd like to make a, yes, Lisa.
Well, before you, just so you know, Christine and I did work on developing this draft. I don't believe she had any other resolutions that had come your way. And in fact, the City and Town Clerks Association, they usually send things out, and there was nothing, they were looking for input also from other communities who had passed something.
Yeah.
So this is very rough. If it's something that you are happy with, that's fine. If you wanted to change anything, that would be fine also if you had any.
Like it.
Does it, I guess, is it really mention the sub-A too, I guess, or
No,
we're just going to leave that out until things happen,
Right,
progressing?
because, I believe Representative Kennedy contacted Christine and stated that sub-A had not been introduced.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, all right. Does everyone else have any questions on it, or can I
think it's
get
like,
a motion
we
to?
bail out the banks, now we're bailing out the builders.
Oh, yeah, anybody.
Yes, Bill?
I think timeliness is an issue. I mean, if they're going to, end the session in mid-June, you probably need to get it up there.
Right.
Do you
I
have
move that
something
we
from-
approve the resolution. How's that?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
I
Aye.
There.
strongly
Thank you, Chris. Lisa?
recommend.
And of course, we'll send it out to everybody. Leah,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Hope you're not on your bike tonight. Isn't it awful when June bugs hit you? I hate that.
Next on the agenda on the new business is the award bids. Number one is to discuss and consider awarding the bid for professional engineering and related services to Fuss & O'Neill and Crossman Engineering for a 3-year period from July 1, 2013 to July 30th, 2016, with a town option of a 1-year extension.
So moved.
Bill McGeary wanted me to kind of dish it off to him and then him to the planner, Jim Lamfair, to explain the complexities of this bid process and award.
Oh, just very
Potential
briefly.
award.
Make a motion in a second, then we can have discussion.
Well, I'll throw a second in.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Now,
you.
Bill, go ahead.
Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you. Just very briefly, we currently have a 3-year agreement with 2 engineering firms, Fuss & O'Neill and is it Commonwealth? Crossman Engineering, as our on-call engineering services for a 3-year period. And that expires June 30th this year. And as a result of that, we put out an RFP a few months ago for a 3-year period of engineering services from July 1st, 2013 until June 30th, 2016, with a town option of 1 year. The attached RFP was posted on the town's website, advertised in the Westerly Sun on April 7th, and the clerk's office also emailed 26 firms. On May 10th, we opened up the bids, and there were 10 bids that were received. We subsequently turned them over to Jim Lamfair and Linda St. Amar in the planning department. They reviewed them. It took them several days. It was a comprehensive review, and upon conclusion of the review, they recommended that we keep the same 2 on-call engineering services, Fuss & O'Neill and Crossman Engineering.
Okay. Jim, Jim doesn't need to.
Jim, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you did a fine job. I can answer questions if you have any.
Okay. Does anyone have any
Thank you.
questions on that? Okay.
The only statement I would have is they have a track record with the town of Hopkinton and these 2 things.
They do.
And if I could just add, we've had to work very closely with, in particular, with Fuss & O'Neill, and they're fabulous. I mean, honestly, they have been just fabulous. We haven't had as much experience with Crossman because we use Fuss & O'Neill so much, but the town's been extremely well served by them. We really have been very lucky.
Thanks, Pat. Okay, the motion, Bill was able to Oh, I'm sorry.
Page 2,
Page 2 of the
motion.
motion.
I know, I just said, the way you read it was actually a motion, so I moved what you read.
Oh, okay.
And she seconded it, so we can just vote, because it's exactly what
Okay,
you
motion's
read.
made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next on the
Trying to
agenda,
make this
under the
one
award bids is number 2, discuss and consider a bid award for the purchase of mid-grade gasoline to Petro Heating and Air Conditioning LLC of Warwick, Rhode Island. The low bidder for the fixed added price of 16 cents per gallon for a 3-year period from July 1, 2013 through July 30th, 2016.
I mean, 6,
So moved.
16.
Any,
What?
any questions, Scott?
I make a motion that...
I did, I just said so moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Because we can discuss after a second.
Third bid award, potential bid award is discuss and consider bid award for the purchase of diesel fuel to Ginger's Service Station, Inc. of Wesley, Rhode Island. The low bidder for the fixed added price of 6 cents per gallon for a 3-year period from July 1, 2013 through June 30th, 2016.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Discuss and consider number 4. Discuss and consider a bid award for the purchase of propane gas heating fuel to Arrow Gas of North Kingstown, Rhode Island, the sole bidder for the fixed added price of 32 cents per gallon and burner services of $120 per hour for Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and $200 per hour from Monday through Friday from 4 p.m. to 8 a.m., including weekends and holidays, less a 20% discount from the parts list for a 3-year period from July 1st, 2013 through June 30th, 2016.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Number 5, discuss and consider a bid award for the purchase of number two fuel oil to Ginger's Service Station, Inc. of Wesley, Rhode Island. The low bidder for the fixed added price of 6 cents per gallon for a 3-year period from July 1st, 2013 through June 30th, 2016.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Number 6, discuss and consider a bid award for the purchase of heating and cooling system maintenance services to Ginger's Service Station, Inc. of Wesley, Rhode Island. The low bidder for $78 per hour from Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and $90 per hour for Monday through Friday from 4 p.m. to 8 a.m., including weekends and holidays, less a 25% discount from the parts list for a 3-year period from July 1st, 2013 through June 30th, 2016.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye. They're such good people, too.
Lastly, number 7, discuss and consider a bid award for the purchase of emulsified asphalt for chip sealing 3/8-inch stone in its application on town roadways to New England Asphalt Services LLC of Northford, Connecticut. The low bidder for 62,860 yards at $1.58 per yard for a total sum of $99,318.80.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Last public forum. Anyone out there wishing to speak? No. I guess need a motion to adjourn.
So
Make a
moved.
motion we adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.